Good evening, and we are back. I am back at the Airbnb. As you can see, today has been a day of days. I can't believe everything that's happened. Like, I feel crazy that I was actually able to get 3 things done today, particularly with how late I started. And I understand I got back pretty late. Like, it's past 10 now. My phone's charging. I have to say it was pretty fun, the fact that from the National Korean Museum back to the Airbnb, it actually only took 30 minutes. I don't know why it took a lot longer to get there. It was like 48 minutes to get there, but only 30 minutes to get back. And this is after I went to the Chinese restaurant for dinner. I discussed a little bit about the Korean National Museum already. Actually, funny note, I was doing it without my mask on, and I was holding the camera. I was like turning back and forth. I think either someone told on me or security caught that, because I went to go put the camera down on top of the water dispenser, and because I was going to be right next to a water dispenser, I put my mask back on because I didn't want any spit to come out, just in case. I finished up my video there, and there was a security guy like right behind me. I didn't know. Like, he was just waiting there the entire time, but because I finished talking and did my spiel and I had my mask on and everything was good, I went to go put my, the camera stuff away, and he just walked off. Like, he was watching me though. There was no one else there at that moment. People were walking by, so I was trying to be as cautious as possible, but that does stick with me because that was my fault. I did have my mask off, and I do know that there's like that whole wearing a mask thing. So I even said in the video, I believe, that I didn't feel comfortable having my mask off. I finished up there and left, and yeah, there was no issue with the security. But to get to the main point of this video is the fact that I went to the Korean War Memorial Museum because there was that 2-hour delay at the Korean National Museum. So my reservation was in 2.5 hours from the time that I actually got there. So I decided that I'd hop on to a train and go over to the War Memorial, which, I mean, I do have, obviously I'm coming back from me running back to the National Museum from the War Memorial here. I think that's how I'm going to edit it. There's a bit before this, obviously. When I got to the War Memorial Museum, it was simply write my name and phone number down, take my temp, and walk right in. And there was no wait. There was nothing, to have to do. Look, it was a lot emptier than the National Museum. It's a shame because they're both free, but a lot of the information, I would say, there's a lot of overlapping information in parts, because Korea has a lot of a history of war almost. I was watching this one little video about fortresses in Korea, and the video mentioned that Korea was known as the land of the fortresses. What I'm trying to get at is the fortresses. There's 3 types of fortresses, I think they said, that were built. There was the wooden fortress, the stone or brick fortress, and then there was the earth fortress, which was just like levees where they built up earth to create some sort of barrier. And as time went on, Korea got better and better at creating the fortresses, and the one in Suwon is their jewel, which is the one that I'm hoping that I'll be able to see sometime during this trip. But the major thing is that they have everything set up in this war museum, or I'm sorry, going back to the fortresses as I lose track of what I'm saying. Each fortress was built stronger and stronger based on 2 things. 1, the knowledge of who was attacking them, and 2, the technology at the time that was improving. So at the very beginning, they go through a civil turmoil, and they start building walls rather than fortresses, and these walls later get integrated into the fortresses, and they would build walls around their towns. And at first it was just earth, and then they would dig a moat, and they use the dirt from the moat to make the fortress walls. And then later they added wood in order to reinforce the dirt. And then the last step was when they really improved and started using first stone, kind of like the Japanese did, and then actual brick, where they would lay brick in the appropriate ways. And I think we'll see that at the castle that's actually here, or the fortresses that are actually here. There's two of them, I think. I'm not 100% sure. It might actually just be one big fortress. That's what I'm trying to get at. But we'll go see a couple of fortress walls. The like history behind it was really interesting because first it was like I said, like Civil War. And then it was them versus China. And then it was them versus Japan. And Japan is really where they focused a lot of their information on, a lot of the fighting. One of the first things you see as you enter in their, like from the grand hall, when you go into their kind of historical center, the actual exhibit area, one of the first things you see is a turtle boat that's right next to a warship or a battleship. I can't remember what they called it. But you can clearly tell the difference. They were 1/2.5 scale. They built it to where you could really see inside of it. And I do walk around the warship, and from the front of the turtle boat, you're actually able to go see inside. They have a cute little cannon on the side there. These moves in technology are actually some of the things that helped the Koreans defend themselves against the Japanese, being that the Japanese were in Japan, they had to sail over. And it was really when they kind of took them by surprise where they were able to just push the Koreans all the way up to the Chinese border. And the Koreans had to kind of make that deal with the devil, so to say. The Ming Dynasty, I believe it was at the time, where they made a deal and then they would help push the Japanese all the way back down to Busan. There was a lot of this type of technology from the time. There was also pottery, metallurgy. I mean, this is going to sound a lot of the same stuff that I said in the National Korea Museum video. And they should sound the same because they're really similar, right? Like, they're the same items. The culture, it's Korean culture, so that's why it's linked in there. And their warfare is part of their culture as well, and so that's kind of linked in there. But that being said, I thought I was going to see a lot more about the Korean War, particularly more along the lines of like that brother versus brother or son versus father. There was a lot of those type of stories, and maybe I was just like going too fast and I missed it, or I was like really tired and I missed it. But it does make me want to go back just to double check. It's free to go, so maybe I'll just do that. The big thing about it is that once there, you get by the little portions of it, and I should mention outside there's like a huge memorial, a mural, and a statue, like a few statues of the Korean War. And I don't know if there's a message behind it or not, but the feeling I got while looking at it was that it just tore families apart. Like, it was the same people fighting the same people. And that's kind of what I saw when I was looking at it. It was like, there's babies, mothers, and then all the guys that are trying to move forward. And then there's the huge memorial in the middle, which looks like a broken spear tip. This is just what I saw and what I felt it to be. And in the middle of the broken spear is the murals of like all these like families and faces and whatnot from I would say from the war. And also another thing outside, there was a huge area of names, kind of like the Vietnam Memorial in DC. They have the Korean Memorial or Korean War Memorial, and it has all like every name of every soldier that they at least was recorded that passed in that war. I actually found California. It was alphabetical, so there was like Arizona, maybe Arkansas, and then like California. I saw those names, so like there's a little bit of footage of that. And then one kind of side note, I was watching another Korean vlogger. She went to the museum and she did her little tour of the area, and she said that the flags on the outside are to commemorate all the forces that took part in the fighting of the Korean War. So there was a bunch of flags that surround it, and that's kind of what all that meant. But afterwards, like inside the museum, so you go, you get through like ancient warfare, then they're kind of like samurai period warfare, which I call it samurai period, but samurai are obviously Japanese. I want to say it's Joseon period is what I remember. I could be wrong. But that's what I think I remember reading. Then it kind of goes into Vietnam, like the Vietnam War and how Korea helped take part in the Vietnam War. The ROK Army, Republic of Korea Army, I believe is what it stands for. And all the efforts that they've put in to a bunch of different battles, whether it be Vietnam, they were in Iraq, everything the United States was in pretty much, they helped out in. They've actually gone further than that and have done a lot of UN peacekeeping type stuff, going to like Haiti right after the earthquake, going to the Philippines and providing health aid. It was really like all-encompassing. This museum wasn't just based on one type of fighting or war. It was based on all wars and all conflicts that they took part in. After seeing like the turtle boat and all that, going to the opposite side of that and going like one more floor down, I believe it was, there's actually more Korean War stuff. They had tanks and airplanes that they used. There was a P-51D, there was a Sherman M4 Easy 8, you know, a T-34-85, a ton, like a Su-100, which I would only assume like that's for the North? I don't know. Did the South buy weapons from whoever they could? It could have definitely, right? That could have definitely happened. Oh yeah, like part of the Korean War effort, like when you go into seeing their uniforms and their weaponry, they actually have a lot of weaponry that's like from either Germany, China, or Russia, which that was really interesting to me. There was a lot to learn, and because I was limited to the it was less than 2 hours, but I did spend 2 hours there. I was allotted 2 hours, but I you know, I have to also take in the fact that it's like a half an hour travel time to and from the other museum because of the entrances being blocked because of COVID. I mentioned this in the other video. You know, it would be worth going back, if not just to look for my Joby Gorilla pod. Anyhow, the museum is worth every second that you spend there, and there's so much that you could learn and see and experience. And, you know, just walking around and being able to kind of like really have a good understanding of what is their point of view when it came to what they were fighting for. Obviously, like, as an American coming in, you're going to look at it as, oh yeah, we fought in this conflict. Oh yeah, we fought in the Vietnam, you know, conflict. Like, we're trying to prevent the domino effect, so to say. But they were fighting for their homes. You know, they were fighting for something they believed in. And although Americans could have definitely believed in what they were fighting for at the time, there's also that point where you get disillusioned. And the Vietnam War is the one that's more strong in my mind than the Korean War. But the Korean War is always called the Forgotten War because most people forgot that it happened back in the States. And it's such a shame because it was a major conflict. Like, it was a war, right? And so yeah, it was really nice to see all that information just laid out and to see how their battle plans worked and how they thought about like how the plan to invade Incheon, you know, to kind of loop around, how that worked out. I think it was MacArthur was what I read. MacArthur did this crazy plan that wrapped around into Incheon because the South Koreans were actually pushed all the way down to like Busan or something as well. And MacArthur came in, cut their supplies, and was able to help kind of envelop and regain ground and actually push them all the way back up, I think almost into China. And where China was, that was when they started to get worried and they started to decide to help the North a lot more, to help push back. There's all sorts of different exhibits there that were interesting. That I think one of my favorite things, which is maybe strange because it's not related to the Korean War there, was that they had this wall full of the gear that a Korean soldier carries with them right now. And it's funny because it looks like one of those Gundam models. Like, it's a big metal grate and it's every piece has like an alphabet or a number. I couldn't remember. And it's like the shirt's right here and the pants are right there, and you know, the socks and you got like weapons and supplies, and each thing is labeled, and then you could read what each thing is, and you can clearly see it on the wall, but it looks like a model kit. Like, you would go in and clip them off so that you could put them in your pack or build it up together. So I thought that was really neat. Oh, another really interesting thing, the amount of women that were in the army. It started off with 500 volunteers back, I want to say in 1948 was what I recall. Then now there's over 11,000, almost 12,000 recruits in service in the army, which is just awesome. there was this wall that shows, I think either took a video of it or a photo, but a wall that shows all the important points in the Korean Army for women, and whether it was the first, like, I think it was the first general or first pilot. One of their main points, which was interesting, like really shot out to me, was the ability to go back into the military after having kids. Like, that's kind of an interesting thought, to be able to rejoin. I mean, I guess I understand why not, but at the same time, if that's what they want to do, I would say, yeah, that's perfectly legit to have a staff officer, or I don't know about combat, you know, they didn't really mention it, but I mean, sure, why not, right? Like patrolling. They didn't go too far into what women did, because I know the first women that joined up on the timeline were medics or nurses, combat nurses. So I think that's pretty normal though, right? That's how most women start off in the militaries around the world, I think. And this is not like today's standards, right? This is like, I want to say during the Civil War in America, there were women combat nurses, so to say. They didn't do any combat, but they were in the thick of it. Like, they would be pretty close to the battlefield. Civil War is probably a bad example because people literally set up tables outside to watch them fight, if I recall correctly of my history. But I digress. Going to the War Museum is totally worth it, or the War Memorial Museum, let's get that right, is totally worth it. And I think it's worth, again, every second that you want to go spend there and learn. And I would definitely give 2 to 3 hours to actually really try to absorb all that. And probably don't go when you're really tired. Like, I'm looking at my face right now on the mirror that I have on this camera, and I look tired. So I look as tired as I feel, and that's not good. Oh, yeah, and don't lose any of your camera gear when you're on the way. Anyhow, I will check back in on the next video.